7:02 p.m. I will share the public charge. The Board of Commissioners asks its members and citizens to conduct themselves in a respectful, courteous manner, both with the board and fellow citizens. At any time, should any member of the board or any citizen fail to observe the public charge, the chair will ask the offending person to leave the meeting until that individual regains personal control. Should decorum fail to be restored, the chair will recess the meeting until such time that a genuine commitment to the public charge is observed. As a courtesy to others, please turn off cell phones during your time that you may be speaking, and please mute yourself when you're not speaking. We will start with a moment of silence this evening instead of the Pledge of Allegiance. And I do want to acknowledge that this evening is actually the end of the holiday of Yom Kippur. Many families are actually breaking fast today after a day of fasting. So I do want to acknowledge that today was actually a holiday, and I want to apologize that I did not realize that myself when I'm celebrating this holiday myself. So I just want to say that I recognize that there are many people that are celebrating this important holiday this evening, and because I forgot, I'm missing my own family celebration this evening, breaking the fast. So I know Commissioner Recca and I have no excuse on this one as people who observe the Yom Kippur holiday. So it's the end of the day of fasting and the Jewish High Holy Days. So I just would like to wish everyone a good, that people had a good fast today who are fasting, and to have a moment of silence. Thank you.
Madam Chair, before we do that, could we please include in our moment of prayer the people that have been injured and damaged by gunfire, and also Bernetta Taylor, the young Black female that was shot and killed, and the trial that was, I call it a kangaroo trial, that was had. If we can just include people that are continuously being damaged by gunfire and by racism in our country, in our moment of silence, please.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Howerton. And that's very important in these times of reflection to hold everybody within our hearts. Thank you. Okay, are there any adjustments to our agenda this evening? Okay, moving on to our announcements. The Durham Center for Senior Life presents Everyday Essential Supply Drive. DCSL will be hosting a supply drive and seeking donations. There will be a curbside drop-off starting on Wednesday, September 30th from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. And this is for things like cleaning supplies and a lot of just basic hygiene items, toilet paper. There is a list on the website if you can help with donations for our seniors. The number is 919-688-8247. Eat NC delivers DPS school meals. if your DPS student is attending school at home and you are unable to pick up school meals from a DPS site, you can sign up for Eat NC's weekly home meal deliveries by visiting www.eatnorthcarolina.org/DPS school meals. This work is being made possible by Durham County government and also other businesses, organizations, and people. And you can also support this effort, and we'll have more information on our website and announcements about that. Durham Pre-K is still accepting applications for the 2021 school year. Durham Pre-K is going to be no monthly fees for any family this year. This is really an incredible opportunity for all of our families, regardless of family income, no monthly family fees. So please find out more at 1-833-733-5338 or visit the www.durhamprek.org/enrollment. DCHC MPO seeks comments on the US 15501 corridor study. The Durham Chapel Hill Harborough Metropolitan Planning Organization is seeking feedback right now on this study, which identifies highway, transit, bike, pedestrian, and other transportation improvements along the 15501 corridor. If you want to submit comments, please contact Andrew Henry, 919-560-5366, extension 36419. We also have his email address. There will be a public hearing on October 14th at 9 a.m. and you can also participate by submitting comments to that as well. The Triangle Commuter Rail survey is happening right now. The Triangle Commuter Rail line, which is included in the transit plans for Wake and Durham counties, is entering the last preliminary study phase, and planners are wanting input from you throughout the next 12 to 18 months. Please visit www.goforwardnc.org/commuterrail to complete the survey, and please give your input. The state has an additional $40 million for COVID relief for small businesses. This program is available right now. The North Carolina Mortgage, Utility, and Rent Relief Program will provide up to $20,000 for qualifying businesses, and this is for mortgage interest, help with mortgage interest payments, rent payments, utility expenses from any period from April 1st through July 31st. So if you want to find more information about this opportunity, www.nccommerce.com. There's also the Coronavirus Economic Support for Families Extra Credit Grant Program. Will serve most North Carolina families with children ages 16 or younger. They are eligible for a COVID-19 relief payment of $335. Most families who have paid the 2019 taxes will automatically get this return. But if you did not file 2019 taxes, then you actually need to individually file to get this $335 payment. Again, we will have more information on our website, also at www.ncdor.gov/extra credit, and you need to apply before October 15th. Triangle Career Expo, if you are an employer and would like to participate in the expo, Please register. We'll have the website up for that. This is on October 8th from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. It is a free event for people who are looking for work. We'll have many businesses there. This is being sponsored by the Chamber and NC Works, Office of Economic and Workforce Development. Any other additional comments? Yes, Heidi Carter, Commissioner Carter.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that I attended the Animal Welfare Advisory Committee meeting the other week, last week. I'm their liaison, and that group wanted me to try to help spread the word that they are having people stop by every 30 minutes who are needing financial assistance for pet food. And so what they're doing is setting up a pet pantry, and they are accepting donations of dog food, cat food, small pet food at the actual site on East Club Boulevard. You could someone, if they're interested, could also go online to the APS of Durham website and make a financial contribution to the Pet Pantry Fund. There's also a form on the website, apsofdurham.org, for pet food assistance. If you need assistance, you can complete the form on their website. So I said I would announce that, and I didn't know whether that might be something we could include in our social media blurbs as well, if that seems like a good idea.
Thank you, Commissioner Carter. And could you send that information to Monica and Deborah so when they print up these announcements, they can include those, because
Good idea. Will do.
Our staff has been doing a great job of getting all the announcements, everything gets put out for public information. So, excuse me, I'm going to need to get someone to move my dog. So that would be great to get that added, the announcements. Thank you. And I guess I just want to add one other. We have so many surveys right now. So there's the 15501 corridor, input about that, the commuter rail. There's actually a Triangle Bikeways survey that's out right now. It would be probably good to get that included as well. That's a planned bike connection between Durham, Wake, and Orange counties. That is could be an alternative for commuting along 40. Actually having a separate protected bikeway, that's out for community input right now as well. So I know that it's in the county newsletter, so it'd be great to get that out as well. Okay, so lots of opportunities for our community, for jobs, for food, for small business support, and any other announcements. Okay, we have our minutes this evening, the August 3rd work session and August 10th regular session minutes.
Move approval.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Reckow, seconded by Commissioner Carter, and a voice vote starting with Commissioner Hill.
Aye.
Commissioner Howerton.
Aye.
Commissioner Carter.
Aye.
Commissioner Reckow.
Aye.
And I'm aye, so they're unanimously approved. Okay, this evening we have a ceremonial item, which is a proclamation for Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and it is my understanding that we have Kent Wallace-Mig with us from the Durham Crisis Response Center. Kent, are you here with us this evening?
Yes, I'm here.
There you are. Thank you for being with us, Kent.
Well, thank you guys for recognizing the importance of October, as we recognize those who have lost their lives to domestic violence, but we also renew our commitment to working with the victims and survivors and making sure that we're there to provide the services that they need. And we could not do that without the support of the county, and we're just so appreciative to everything that you guys have done for us with our new Family Justice Center that you guys have donated to us. And I was just there earlier today, and it's going to be a fantastic space for us. But as I always say, we're just the caretakers of that, because it's a community facility. It's a place where individuals come and receive services who are experiencing domestic violence, just from a multitude of providers. And we're just so thankful for everything that the county has done for us. And we are so respectful that you guys have recognized October, as we do, as Domestic Violence Awareness Month.
Well, thank you, Ken. And I know all of us cannot wait till we can get a tour of that facility. So please let us know. I'm going to share the proclamation, and then if you have other further comments, we'll welcome those. Durham Board of County Commissioners Proclamation for Domestic Violence Awareness Month 2020. Whereas the safety, security, physical, and emotional well-being of our neighbors affects the lives of everyone in our community, we recognize that domestic violence takes a variety of forms and believe all individuals have the right to live their best and fullest lives free of violence and fear. And whereas we recognize that 1 in 4 women and 1 in 7 men report experiencing severe violence by an intimate partner in their lifetimes, according to the Centers for Disease Control. Domestic violence is a serious, preventable public health concern involving the manipulation of power and control, including willful intimidation, physical and sexual assault, emotional and financial abuse, and other abusive behaviors. And whereas anyone can be a victim of intimate partner violence, regardless of gender, age, race, socioeconomic status, ability, or relationship choice, we believe that everyone deserves a life free of violence, regardless of gender identification, ethnicity, ability, age, religion, or social status. And whereas we recognize that the crime of domestic violence impacts victims, families, and society, and can lead to long-term health problems, missed days of work and loss of employment, psychological distress, family instability, and homelessness, and increased risk for future violence. And whereas ending domestic violence starts with awareness and education, changing social norms about gender and violence, and mobilizing our communities, including men, boys, our faith institutions, the public and private sectors. Now, therefore, I, Wendy Jacobs, Chair of the Durham Board of County Commissioners, on behalf of the Durham County Board of Commissioners, do proclaim October 2020 as Domestic Violence Awareness Month in Durham County. We urge all who engage with youth to teach and model respect, consent, and healthy relationship. We encourage government, health professionals, law enforcement, faith communities, and civic organizations to ensure an inclusive environment that supports survivors of domestic violence and sustains their efforts to rebuild their lives without violence in Durham. We are also strongly committed to working with all partners so that every individual can access appropriate and affirming resources to address and end violence in our communities. This, the 28th day of September 2020, Wendy Jacobs, Chair, Durham Board of County Commissioners. So thank you for this very important resolution. And Ken, if you could also tell us, I know that there are some events and other things planned, if you could share that as well.
Yeah. We have a candlelight vigil on Thursday, October 1st, and there will be links on our website, which is duringcrisisresponse.org. And during that vigil, we will recognize those individuals in North Carolina who have lost their lives, and pay honor to them. But as I said before, we will recommit ourselves to being there for those individuals, those victims and survivors who need the services we provide. Last year alone, we answered over 2,000 calls for individuals who needed assistance in understanding the situation they were in and being able to seek services that we provide. And we have our lethality assessment program, which receives over 100 calls a month. And that's where a responding officer shows up on the scene and determines that this is a domestic violence situation and immediately understands that this person needs to have safety planning, and they contact one of our legal advocates, and we try to work with the victim so that they are able to be safe for that night and then for the coming days. I am so grateful that you guys are recognizing October. We received a call on Friday that we lost an individual we had been serving, and so it's been a very difficult few days for the team. So I'm not in my best shape right now as we try to navigate this and understand, how this happens. But thank you so much, Chair Jacobs. Commissioner Howerton, you shared earlier, about just recognizing the violence in the communities, and I appreciate that. Thank you all for what you do to support Durham Crisis Response Center, and thank you all for what you do to support the community.
Thank you, Kent. I'm very sorry to hear about that loss for our community and for all of you. Thank you. Commissioner Howerton?
Madam Chair, Ken, thank you. So I have to say thank you and your team for the work that you do. I cannot imagine how difficult these days must be. As I received a list of names that to be a part of your program, your candlelight vigil, I could not get through all the names. It was so disturbing just to get ready to read the names and going through that. So for you to be involved in that on a daily basis, I can't even imagine how tough that must be. And I just want to say thank you for the commitment that you and your team are for doing this kind of work.
It's the team, and thank you for recognizing that.
Commissioner Reckow?
I also want to thank you, Kent, and your whole team for your work. During this pandemic, unfortunately, we've seen an increase in domestic violence, and so your work is even more essential now than ever. And so we really thank you and your colleagues for your great effort. I love for you to think about, once you get everything settled in the new space, that you might consider providing us a virtual tour so we are able to get over there in person. I'd love to see how you're using the space in the building.
We can definitely do that.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for your support. It's amazing.
All of us really toured the Family Justice Center in Greensboro, and we know from the data that it's something that really works. And I also want to just comment, and you could probably add more to this, Kent, that about a week or so ago, we had a conference celebrating and recognizing the end of the 4-year federal grant that we've had through DSS to address domestic violence. And what was inspiring about that is the incredible work that's happened with the Duke Center for Child and Family Medicine, Durham Crisis Response Center, all of our first responders in the city and the county, DSS, Family Exchange Center, many, many, many partners have worked together on this program that is going to continue. It's going to live on, which, when grants are over, sometimes things go away because there isn't funding. But what's exciting to me is what Kent was just mentioning the lethality assessment program that connects people immediately to the Durham Crisis Response Center. And the work that we're doing in Durham County related to ACEs and trauma, it gets the children and the parents directly into counseling and therapy and mental health support to try to support and interrupt that cycle of trauma and build resilience. So that's really exciting. And DSS is
on the impact of children, impact on children who are living in a domestic violence situation. But what it has done is just proven that Durham is an amazing place in terms of all the collaborations and the partnerships that have come out of that, and they're going to live on and grow. And it's difficult that it needs to exist, but it's wonderful that those partnerships do exist.
Thank you again. And we'll see you at the vigil. Thank you. And please express our gratitude to all of your staff as well, because I know that Tammy was the one who had brought forward this.
Yes.
So
I always share everything with staff in terms of how you guys support us.
Thank you.
So we're very appreciative.
Thank you so much. Okay, we're moving on to our consent agenda, and I know these are all new items for all of us, and because they were not on our work session agenda. So just want to make sure that there are no questions from any board members specifically about any of these items. Yes, Commissioner Reckow.
I just had one possible word change in the first legislative goal under the NCACC legislative items.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. So in the first goal, I was going to suggest that it says seek legislation to create a blue ribbon panel of expert educators to study, develop, and implement critical training programs. I wondered about substituting for training and saying remediation programs to help North Carolina students recover from the education slide resulting from the COVID-related transition to virtual learning.
Yes, I will make that change.
Okay.
The item that we sent to Raleigh.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
And thank you, Deborah, for your work pulling that together, because I know I suggested that very quickly at the last work session, and you wrote it up, and the rationale's great. When I saw training, I didn't love it, but remediation would be better.
Very good. It was a great idea.
Thank you.
And I'll just note the transportation related goal that I added was done in collaborative with a group of elected officials from cities and counties that are working together across rural and urban lines, city and county, to expand funding for transit and for rail. And so I'm really excited about that goal. It is going to be submitted through both NCACC and the League of Municipalities. So it's a really, and was also done in collaboration with NCDOT staff help. So it was really, that language came out of a very collaborative effort. So I'm excited about that. I know I got it to Deborah at the last minute. It was, a lot of people were working on that together. So.
Thank you. We'll push it forward.
Yes. Any other questions or about any other items on this agenda?
I want to thank our tax administrator for putting together a very good goal that's very consistent with our discussions over the past few months. So thank you, Dwayne, for that.
Yes, thank you. And I just have two very quick follow-up items that I know cannot they're not to be addressed now. But item 20-0479, which is about the home care community block grant funding that goes through DSS and Durham Center for Senior Life. I'm just wondering if we can get some type of a memo. Janine, I don't know if you're on here. I know this was a lot of folks were on this item. Joan Peltier from Durham, the Partnership for Durham Seniors, the director of the Durham Center for Senior Life, also Janine. But hey, Janine, just wondering if we can get an update on how those services are going to actually be delivered to seniors because of COVID. I think that's a concern that, you know, with the congregate meals and all the different things that are being funded right now for seniors. So just through an email, if we can get a report on what's happening with our seniors and those programs, that would be great.
Absolutely.
So,
I'll make sure we get that.
Thank you. And my other follow-up item was just 20-0529 for Andy. Andy, are you here? This is just a follow-up question, not for now, but this item, I'm just wondering, you know, this is great and there are lots of great promises being made here for the community. When do you think that we'll have that website up that tracks, you know, all of the projects that we have been involved in funding and all the deliverables and, you know, number of jobs, and then for the community to see that?
Yeah, absolutely. This is Andy Miracle, Economic Development Officer for Durham County. So I anticipate reaching out to commissioners in the next couple weeks, so we can, if desired, schedule a time to kind of go over the website. But we're looking to officially launch, let's see, November 1st. Sorry. So really within the next couple of weeks, we'll be sharing that with commissioners to get final round of feedback. We instituted a number of changes. The first presentation in February, and then really with COVID had to put that on the back burner for some time to focus attention elsewhere. But we've really been implementing all of those desired changes in the last few weeks. So we'll be communicating with the board in the next couple of weeks. Great. Thank you so much. Thank you. And then the last thing I wanted to mention was item 20-0545, the Center for Tech and Civic Life grant of $1.4 million. I just want to do a huge shout out to Claudia Hager. Claudia, come back. She's going in and out. I want to recognize you and Anna Hawksworth and Derek Bowens for this incredible grant. Mike Woodard brought that made me aware of it, and then I immediately got in touch with the manager, and everybody acted really quickly on this incredible opportunity. And wow, $1.4 million, and it happened so quickly. Is that the quickest you've ever heard on a grant? Yes.
Yes, that is the absolute quickest, especially with a positive response. So we are grateful to have that additional resource as we're trying to make sure we have a safe and secure election process.
Well, you guys hit a home run with that. And I think it was more than we all had even anticipated. And it's really going to help with the elections. So thank you so much.
Welcome.
Yeah. Okay, so anything else? I think we'll, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Move approval.
Second.
Okay, moved by Commissioner Howerton, seconded by Commissioner Reckow. And we'll do voice vote. Commissioner Reckow.
Yes.
Commissioner Carter.
Yes.
Commissioner Howerton.
Yes.
Commissioner Hill.
Yes.
Okay, I'm a yes, so that is unanimously approved. Next, we have a public hearing this evening. Oh no, is that right? I've lost my spot here. We have a public hearing, and This is item 20-0508, Unified Development Ordinance Text Amendment regarding development agreements, TC 2000003. And we have with us Michael Stock, Senior Planner. And do we have Sarah Young with us? Sarah?
Yes, you do.
Sarah Young, we need to see your face, Sarah. Can we see you? Our
Yep.
new planning director, Sarah Young. Congratulations to
Thank
you,
you.
Sarah. Well deserved.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Fantastic. So, okay, so we will turn this item over to you both.
Scott is actually here. Mike is observing the holiday, and so Scott is here presenting in Mike's stead.
I will
Thank
do
you.
my best to do Mike and our new planning director proud. My name is Scott Whiteman from the City County Planning Department. Before I begin the presentation, let me just state for the record that all notifications for this public hearing item have been carried out as required by law. So this case, TC 2003, is an amendment to the Unified Development Ordinance to expressly allow development agreements as permitted by state law. Some general background on development agreements. They've been permitted by state law since approximately 2005. Until 2015, the UDO had a prohibition on the city or county using development agreements. The reason why this is coming forward right now is that there is a zoning proposal in the city to allow a market rate development to construct affordable housing units on a parcel of land that is not, where they're not integrated and cannot meet the provisions of the UDO affordable housing bonus provisions, but would provide more affordable housing than would normally be required under the affordable housing density bonus. This is something, however, that the department has considered as a tool to implement some of our plans and policies in the past, but the particular development is what's driving this at this particular time. So development agreements are a tool that allows cities or counties to enter into a contract with a developer or landowner to go above and beyond what normal zoning regulations would normally allow. It is up to the City Council or the Board of County Commissioners to exercise the tool. It must be approved by the governing body. Sometimes the term development agreements gets used generically, particularly when there's a piece of city or county owned land that is being transferred to a private entity. This only refers to development agreements as they are specifically referenced in state statute. So Durham is not blazing the trail in North Carolina on these. There's many jurisdictions that have used them, including Cary, Chapel Hill, Wilmington, and High Point. The statutory requirements for what it takes for a city or county to enter into a development agreement are very minimal. It requires a newspaper notice for the public hearing. It requires the development agreement to be available to the public prior to the public hearing, and it requires that the governing body approve the development agreement through an ordinance at a public hearing. The statute does not require any advisory board hearings, such as planning commission. So some other statutory requirements, it can be separate from zoning regulations. So although it would often accompany a zoning map change, it can, the county or city could enter into a development agreement for any development, even if a zoning change is not required. They can supplement or modify existing UDO requirements, and they can address the typical zoning things like permitted uses, density, building type, intensity, or placement and design, what public facilities will be provided and by whom and when, and reservations and dedications for public purposes or additional protection of environmentally sensitive resources. It must require, the statute requires that there be a schedule for development construction. The agreement must be recorded at the Register of Deeds office. It can address any other, anything that might be needed to protect public health, safety, and welfare concerns. They can be amended by mutual agreement of the parties. It does not override the rezoning process if a rezoning is associated with the development agreement. So for example, if a zoning map change were required, then the zoning map change would still have to follow the normal process through the Planning Commission to the governing body. So we originally consulted the city attorney's office on this since the original case was in the city. We've also consulted the county attorney's office on this item. The city attorney determined that an affirmative statement in UDO would be necessary to make it clear that these are permitted and to make it clear that UDO requirements may be altered, but only if specified through the development agreement. Any requirements that are being altered must be spelled out in the agreement. The original proposal also stated that uses or housing types that are not allowed in the underlying zoning district could not be altered through a development agreement. For example, an industrial use could not be allowed in a residential zoning district through a development agreement. Next slide, please. Thank you. This originally went to the Planning Commission in July to address some concerns we heard from the Commission. We added an explicit requirement that if it would go to the Planning Commission for a public hearing, if any modification to the UDO was included in the development agreement or if it's associated with a zoning change. Added explicit requirements to make the development agreement process as similar as possible to the zoning map change process. These include things like a pre-submittal meeting or a neighborhood meeting. We've also, in a revised ordinance that was provided to the board, also make it clear that the Planning Commission can continue a development agreement up to 3 cycles, just like a zoning map change. We also added a limitation that a development agreement could not modify any of the environmental protection standards in the UDO. So with the language that is before you today, it is more restrictive than what the state statute spells out as requirements for development agreements. This includes the language of how UDO provisions can be amended, the limitation on changing underlying allowed uses, the environmental requirements that can't be reduced, requirements that cannot be reduced, the Planning Commission public hearing, the pre-submittal conference with planning staff, and the neighborhood meeting are all above and beyond what would be required by the state statute for a development agreement in the state of North Carolina. So with that concludes staff's presentation on this text amendment. We'd be happy to answer any questions or address any concerns from the board at this time.
Thank you, Scott. Questions? Commissioner Howerton?
So thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just looking through the Planning Commission notes, and I know that we had a presentation since they met. Are all of these no's, was this before you had a presentation with us as the board? I know you met with the board members, commissioners, to go over this. So were all of their no votes before we had this conversation?
No votes were before the conversations that we had with the commissioners.
Yes.
And so the no votes were also after the staff added the additional provisions to the ordinance that arose at the first Planning Commission public hearing.
Okay.
Commissioner Reckow?
So I made this point last week when we had our briefing. I feel that the language in this ordinance change is very general, very loose. It doesn't even provide any general parameters for guidelines similar to what you had on your slide, Scott, where you showed you had a few points in terms of how it could be used. This leaves a lot to the imagination. There's just absolutely no guidelines. So one of the things I did raise during the discussion, because I think it could help perhaps with some of the unreadiness that planning commission members had. Yeah, and I know our manager was quite amenable to this happening on our board, would be for us to have a board discussion to provide guidance and guidelines for the staff, because it will be the staff that work through any agreement with the developer, and for us to be able to provide some policy guidance for the staff going forward, I think would be highly appropriate and might help with some of the issues that were raised. So we actually talked about having it on a work session fairly soon, but some of the issues would be similar to ideas that we have within our economic development incentive policy, where we kind of give extra credit for things like environmental sustainability features, doing child care centers. And so when we think about community benefits, it could be broader. And the example that's been used is affordable housing. And obviously that would be appropriate for us. But then there are other things that I think we could define as a board, even incorporating training facilities for enabling a strong apprenticeship program, if it's a work site, you know, a company in Research Triangle Park or up Craburn Corporate Park. So there's a variety of directions, and I just think it would be good for our board to find some of those.
Yeah, Ellen, I Commissioner Recca, I totally agree with you. I actually raised the same issue when I was being briefed. And I'll note that one of the planning commissioners, Austin Amadalia, he also raised the fact that there was no real standard or scope of when this could be used. And he actually suggested that the city have some type of criteria. So I'm curious, Scott, first of all, what my understanding is that this has already been approved by the city council unanimously, or was it, or maybe it was a 6-1 vote, or was it unanimous?
It was approved unanimously last Monday.
Okay, but did the city go ahead and did they actually define any criteria for what would constitute the type of public benefits or community benefits that would warrant this?
They did not. The city council, I was not at that hearing, so Sarah can jump in if I miss anything, but yeah, the city council did not lay out any specific parameters for adopting a development agreement.
Good evening, Sarah Young with the Planning Department. What the council did talk about was making sure to use the development agreement for items that they have already identified to staff, either through the manager's wildly important goals or through other adopted plans, programs, policies. Obviously, affordable housing is a very well-known initiative, concern of the city council, which is why this first one is definitely in that vein. But that was their discussion. They did discuss that at their meeting. And they felt like they had been sufficiently clear with the administration as to what their goals were, to let staff move forward. So.
Okay, but I actually agree with what Austin Amadalius raised, or one of the commissioners, planning commissioners, said that and I think you're raising this too, Commissioner Reckout, that it's important to have it as part of the actual ordinance, because, you know, people come and go, and that it's important to have a standard that's not dependent on, you know, who's you know, who the elected officials are at that time. So I agree, and I think what you raise would be a great discussion for our board to have, to bring that back, even if it's possible at our October work session. I don't know if it could be that soon. I know, Jay, you said, I don't know how quickly you said when we discussed it in my briefing, how quickly did you feel like staff could come back with some suggestions? Are you with us, Jay?
Commissioner Jay is not on the call
okay.
this afternoon. He had to deal with
Okay. All right. Well then, County Manager, do you remember what the time frame was that Jay had suggested?
Well, I was thinking that we could come back in at the November work session in order to give staff ample time to sort of work through some thought.
Okay. Okay. November work session. Okay. Okay. Commissioner Recca?
And depending on what we develop, it might be something that later the staff will decide would be appropriate. Maybe it could be added possibly to a joint city-county planning committee meeting to discuss whether those types of parameters should become part of the ordinance later in a general fashion. Because I think helping to explain this to our citizens and the kinds of community benefit that we're looking for, it just enhances transparency. But I definitely think the first step is for our board to have a discussion, and, you know, there could be discussion with the council. You know, we periodically do those omnibus amendments of the code, and it's possible later it could be incorporated if there's a desire to be more transparent and communicative with our citizens and the development community in terms of the expectations that elected officials have related to community benefits.
Just wanted to hear from our other board members, Commissioner Carter, Commissioner Hill. Any questions? We haven't opened the public hearing yet on this.
That was going to be my question. Is there anyone from the public that we are going to be hearing from tonight?
Monica, did we get any submitted comments on this item?
No, Chair Jacobs, no comments were received during the comment period from Thursday this morning.
Of course, we would want to acknowledge that we received probably 2,000 comments between July and now via email. And those concerns have certainly been taken seriously. I am rather surprised that the Plan Commission wasn't somewhat mollified by the additional requirements that the staff went back and incorporated. But that is what you're saying, right, Scott, that even after the additional requirements that were added in the amendment, the Planning Commission was still so rather vehemently opposed.
Yes, that's true, Commissioner Carter.
I mean, I was really glad to see that, you know, the addition of the no lessening of the environmentally sensitive requirements, you know, any requirement around the environment, nothing was lessened there. I thought that was an excellent addition, and many of the concerns that we heard from citizens and those also raised by the Planning Commission members seem to deal with this lack of transparency and not enough opportunity for community input. And with the additional hearing requirements that you've added, I felt much better about that. all of that. So I really, I'm glad that you worked so hard to be responsive to the people that we were hearing from in the community. And this does seem to be a really good tool, a really useful tool for, enabling more benefits to flow into Durham that wouldn't be able to happen within the normal zoning and regulatory processes. Anyway, I was prepared to approve this tonight. I don't know whether we will now be waiting on that or what we're exactly doing. The city can continue to move forward, I guess, with their development. Is that correct?
Why don't we take a break, and we need to actually open the public hearing. So I'm going to open the public hearing for this item. And again, confirm that we have nobody here has submitted any comments, or no one is here to speak on it. So I'm going to now close the public hearing to bring the matter back before our board. I do have a few final additional questions, but Commissioner Recco?
So I do think we should move forward since it's already been approved by the city. But I do hope and expect that we will spend time in the near future defining the parameters and guidelines for community benefits. And I think that could go some distance towards satisfying some of the concerns I read in the Planning Commission comments. I think there was also some consternation among commissioners that this item was being fairly fast-tracked because of an impending development, and that I don't think that they necessarily like the tie between the amendment going through so fast and this large development. So I think there were other factors. But in my experience of seeing how this has worked in other communities, I agree with what our chair just articulated, that it can, and Commissioner Carter articulated also, that it can be a benefit. But I do think that for our citizens, the transparency is important. And so after we adopt some guidelines, then we need to decide how we can, in fact, make the policy guidance as transparent as possible. But I mean, I don't know, are you ready for a motion?
I have a few questions. So I just want to understand in terms of the process, not just with you, Sarah and Scott, but also from our county attorneys on this. I don't know if Brian Mardell is here, but just process-wise, how would it work with us creating guidelines, and how would that interface with the actual text amendment? I'm just trying to understand process-wise. Do you have any thoughts on that? And I don't know if we have Brian here with us, or maybe we need to ask our county attorney. Here. Oh, Brian, you're here. Okay.
Yeah, I am here.
Okay, so Brian, what are your thoughts on that? What would be the best way for us to incorporate, if we really want to have some guidelines for what would constitute the rationale for doing a community development agreement? Like, what are community benefits?
Yeah. The good thing about the development agreement is that, everything has to come through the legislative bodies before it's approved anyway. So in terms of what agreements and what standards are actually within the agreement, the great thing about it is you can fashion whatever you'd like to fashion, as long as it's in compliance with the UDO. And if you want to have the ability to do some additional things and have some additional requirements, you can do that as well. There are some restrictions on some of the things you can do under the UDO by law now, in terms of exactions and getting certain compromises from developers. And some of that you can sort of not have to deal with if you have a development agreement, because there's going to be consent of all the parties. So I think it's a good tool to have. I think it gives you a lot of flexibility. I think just based upon the legislative bodies and what they want to emphasize, you can do that through a development agreement. I think logistically, it can be done through the joint city-county meetings in terms of setting priorities and what the city and the county would like to see or do. I think logistically that would be a good way to do it. Communication with the planning director is certainly a good way to make sure that whatever your desires are, at the top of the list in terms of what gets considered when they're putting together the development agreement. But the good thing is, ultimately it's going to come back to you, and you can't go forward without the legislative bodies anyway. So in terms of how you want to prioritize it, it is very flexible, and it doesn't override anything that's currently in the UDO, unless you want to have the flexibility to do that.
Okay, so Jude, process-wise, do you recommend that we go ahead and approve it and then do our tweaking of the, what are the kind of community benefits like we've done with our economic incentives policy? Do you recommend we do that afterwards and then have that as a standalone thing, or what?
Well, I'm not really sure how you envision, what the requirements are going to be to actually enter into a development agreement, and what you'd like to see as a board. But from a due process standpoint, I don't think there's any problems with it at all, because under state law and under the new 160D, you're allowed to do development. So, I don't think you got a due process problem. Now, a process problem or a process issue, how you actually get to what the standards are, I think that's something that you just need to discuss as a board, what logistically works best for you guys. But I don't see a problem approving the use of development agreements, because you can already do it as a matter of law. You can already do it, right? It's just, what does it look like for Durham? How does Durham want to use this particular tool? So I think it's fine to go ahead and approve it, and then just sort of work out the details, through some subsequent meetings. I don't think there's a problem with it at all.
Okay, thank you very much. And then I have one other question, Scott, for you or Sarah. Another kind of planning commission comment was that that this is just for developers, but it couldn't this be for any any landowner, any property owner, not a developer per se, but just anybody can use this?
Yeah, certainly any landowner could use this as well. It hits a development agreement, not a developer agreement. So, so a property owner who wanted to make an agreement with the city or county on their property before it's sold to a developer could enter into this agreement. And it's designed for the local government to get a lot of benefits out of it as well. So it's certainly not just designed to allow developers to get around the rules.
Okay, well, I just wanted to raise that point because the agreement actually it lives with the piece of property. It gets filed with the Register of Deeds, so it's something that travels with that property through different owners. I think that's important, and but that anybody could use it for different purposes. So, all right, Commissioner Reckow, I think you're muted.
Well, That's a very good point, and following up just as an example, you could have a property owner who owns a piece of land, let's say in one of our rural areas outside the city limits, and they could put in, let's say, 3 house lots with the current zoning, but they may recognize that it would be environmentally better to cluster those 3 on a smaller portion of the site and preserve the rest. So I mean, one of our guidelines might be land preservation, just to give an example, or environmental protection. And maybe they can't meet the letter of the law exactly with and I don't even know if our cluster provisions allow for something as small as 3 lots. I haven't looked at them recently. But I'm just saying that could be an example of where it's increased flexibility, but everyone's happy because land that maybe backs up on a creek or stream is more protected than it would have been if 3 house lots had gone in. So, you know, those are the kinds of things that could happen outside this. Again, we have a little bit different situation than the city, because anything with any density, unless it's in RTP or Trayburn Corporate Park, will go through the city for any rezonings, because they have the access to the water. So for us, there'll be different kinds of projects. We might get some residential with density in the RTP hub, for example. And with that just breaking ground, I think it's good for us to proceed and get this on the books, because there may be some opportunities in that hub area for some creative approaches. So I think moving fairly quickly, having the discussion quickly is wise, because they've already started construction there, but not all the building plans are solidified yet. It would be good to do.
Well, great. Well, thank you. Any further comments before we take action on this item? All right, so I would entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I would move that we approve the consistency statement for this for development agreement.
Second.
So moved by Commissioner Reckow, seconded by Commissioner Carter. We'll have a voice vote starting with Commissioner Howerton.
Yes.
Commissioner Hill.
Yes.
Commissioner Carter.
Yes.
Commissioner Reckow.
Yes.
I'm a yes. So that is unanimously approved. And we have a second motion.
I would move that we adopt the Unified Development Ordinance regarding development agreements.
Second.
Okay, so I'm not sure who was the second on that. Okay. Moved by Commissioner Reckow, seconded by Commissioner Carter, and voice vote starting with Commissioner Reckow.
Yes.
Commissioner Carter.
Yes.
Commissioner Howerton.
Yes.
Commissioner Hill.
Yes.
I'm a yes, so that second motion is unanimously approved. And so, Mr. Manager, we'll hear back from about the discussion on criteria for community benefits at the November work session, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and thank you, Scott and Sarah, for being with us tonight.
Thank you.
All right, the next item is we get to hear from Rod Jenkins, our Public Health Director. Also, Joanne Pierce is on this item, one of our general managers, and to hear an update on COVID-19 in the Durham community. Thank you, Rod. Good to see you as always.
Good evening, Madam Chair. Always great to see you, fellow commissioners. We bid you a good evening, and we continue to thank you for your support of all of our efforts in this pandemic. Much appreciated. I do believe last week we crossed that threshold of 200 plus days in this pandemic posture. So my thank yous are sincere, and we just want you to know that we're committed to seeing this thing through. So again, we thank you. Your briefing for September 28th. Today, Durham County brought in 29 cases of COVID. We do have 301 active cases. We do have 7,372 inactive for discharge. We did pick up a number of deaths since the last time I spoke to you all. We picked up about 9 deaths. They were all related to, the majority of them related to long-term care facilities and individuals who may have been hospitalized for quite some time. So as always, our thoughts and prayers continue to go with those families who lost loved ones due to COVID. This is just a stark reminder that COVID is real, and it is still a very deadly pathogen. That brings our total to 7,773 total cases of COVID. Between Durham County Department of Public Health and CCNC, we've made 14,521 contacts to our residents to alert them about the dangers of COVID, get them in care. We continue to hold our own. Our 7-day average, moving average was 30 cases. So that makes us in relatively stable condition compared to an average of 28 last week and a decrease of 29 from the previous week. So we continue to move forward. So far in the month of September, there have been 838 cases so far. And North Carolina's trajectory of lab confirmed cases continues to decline. Durham is continuing to decline. We're also a little bit stable. Throughout the Southeast, Central and Southeast, we are seeing relatively continued decline. We are seeing an uptick in the Northeast section of North Carolina, and the state is keeping a close eye on it. In terms of race, ethnicity, and work, nothing much has changed. We continue to move forward and try to assist our Hispanic, Latinx population. They're at roughly 40% of all cases. Black African American are proportionally represented at 35.7%, and our white Durhamites are underrepresented at 21.15% of all cases. In terms of work, race, ethnicity, and sex, we continue to see kind of the same, relatively the same, where unemployed individuals, construction workers, now nursing care facilities are impacted mostly in our cases. The unemployed individuals do represent our Hispanic population, and over 80% were female. Construction work continues to be male dominated by our Hispanic population, with close to 93% being affected. Nursing care facilities are Black or African American, with 55% being female. We are proud to report that our positive lab reports electronically continues to hold steady, roughly at under 4%. We're at 3.6%. Prior week it was 3.3%, so not much movement there. We continue to hold our own, and per the model that we normally get from Duke on a weekly basis, our cases have been relatively the same, and it certainly is mirroring one another. And additionally, our concern has been on daycare and school-age children. Of course, Durham Public Schools has decided to continue to be remote through the end of the semester. However, we have seen gains in positive improvement. I think the last time I met with you all, the total percentage for individuals under the age of 18 was 20%. Today, I can report that that percentage is 15.70%. So we are continuing to see relatively strong gains. We will certainly promote flu shots, and we also promote the new app that has been released by the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services called Slow COVID NC. It's available on the Apple App Store, and it's also available on the Google Play Store. It is not big government, local government, state government trying to spy on you. It is a tool that we could add to our toolbox to help to mitigate the spread of COVID. If you have the app on your phone, it will allow you to know or be alerted if somebody else who has the app is in close proximity to you. And it will alert you to go into quarantine and give you some further instruction. North Carolina has it. It's specifically designed for North Carolina. The state of Virginia has it. And I do believe that the state of South Carolina is coming online with it as well. So it's definitely some great technology to help assist us. I do believe Madam Chair has downloaded it to her phone. I have it on my work phone, and I also have it on my personal phone. So we definitely want to keep everybody safe. Mr. Recall, I hope you don't mind. I wanted to follow up on an inquiry that you had last time in reference to children. It has been reported that we here in Durham have been testing kids as young as 6 months old. So to answer your question, man, we are seeing, I know there was an NPR report you saw. I have been assured that we are definitely taking care of our pediatric kids from 6 months on up to age 18. This time I'll be happy to answer any questions you have.
Is there a particular location that a parent should take a young child for the testing?
I have been assured that at our Holton site, if you are alerted as being a close contact, you'll be able to be tested there. I do know that not necessarily our CVS sites because they are only testing kids 12 and older, but I've not heard from Walgreens turning around any kids who are younger than 12 years old. And most pediatricians are able to provide that test as well. Hope that answers.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rod, for a great report as always. Other questions from commissioners? Rod, I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about any suggestions that you have about how we get people getting the flu vaccine. Any thoughts on that, and
Sure.
And where people can get them right now?
I have been advised by the state that compared to 2019, we are way ahead of where we are in terms of flu vaccination. I have also been advised by Lincoln Community Health Center that they have administered over 3,000 flu shots. I do know that CVS is doing a great job with administering flu shots. So it is definitely available for those individuals who want it. There has not necessarily been any indication that there's a flu vaccine shortage. As we all know with flu vaccines, depending on the strain of flu, it could be a tough year, it could be a relatively mild. So time will tell. But nevertheless, we certainly encourage everyone to get flu shot. In most cases, you are able to get them just a little bit anywhere, even Harris Teeter. So it's a little bit everywhere. So we strongly encourage you all to protect yourself.
Thank you, Rod. And the other question I wanted to raise, or just to the other, resource. I know seems like, it's fantastic that we're down to 40% infection rate in the Latinx community, because we were up to almost 80% a few months ago. So that is a great thing, progress, although we know that Latinx community is only 14% of our population, so it's still a disparity. Could you, and it just seems like we're down to those really, really hard group, the long-term care facilities, and the workers there as well, and again, construction. Do you know how it's going with the COVID support program that Cure America's is helping to lead in Durham through Duke Community Health, and do you have any information that you could share with us about that?
Relatively little information I have received, but I do know that they're up and running. They have been up and running for at least 3 weeks. I know that they're ironing out some kinks because, for example, the community health workers are supposed to have tablets and personal wireless devices in order to be able to sign individuals up for care on the spot. They don't necessarily have that. However, they have been mobilized. They're in the process of being adequately trained, and it continues to be a very promising venture. And we certainly hope that it's successful, because I do believe that the main aim is to really get to the nooks and crannies in different neighborhoods, particularly in our Latinx population, and ensuring that we're able to get them the resources and the care that they need. But more than happy to follow up on that for you, Madam Chair.
Well, thank you. I mean, whenever you find out, sending us all the contact information would be great, because it's being done through like 10 different community-rooted organizations, and so when all of us may get contacted by people, then we will know how to refer people, because it's going to help people with staying at home and getting paid sick leave, food, all kinds of support will be provided through this program to people in our community. So I'm hoping that's going to help us get through some of those numbers that we've had a hard time with.
That's right, and we're very fortunate that the state has now has the resources to mobilize these actions. But more than happy to get that information from you all.
Thank you so much, and again, thank you for all you're doing and being our Durham cheerleader, helping us all get through this together.
Lovely. It's all about the team. Thank y'all so much.
Thank you, Rod. Okay, the next item on our agenda is a discussion on the joint Durham Community Safety and Wellness Task Force. And I'm going to turn this over to you, Commissioner Hill. I really want to thank you, Commissioner Hill, for your leadership on this. I know that you've been acting as a liaison for our board and having lots of conversations with other school board members, city council members, and other people in the community, and also members of our board and other elected officials. So thank you so much. And I'm gonna turn it over to you. I know you requested to provide an update and possibly for us to be able to move forward with this item. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So my wife is calling me. Okay.
We always know time to call Commissioner Hill.
She does indeed. I want to thank my colleagues for all the hard work and time that they put into this. And I have sent an email to you that had a few more amendments to the proposed bylaws. You should have those now. I would, I think this is a marvelous opportunity to re-examine safety and wellness in Durham, and I would like to move this forward. I would like to give my colleagues some time to look at the changes that I and other commissioners have proposed. I can read them off to you. That would be more efficient than looking at your email.
That would be great if you could just read them out loud to us. Thank you.
Sure. Of the appointees, the changes were proposed that we would have 2 at-large members, 1 justice-involved member, 1 community organization leader, and 1 parent of a murdered child. Let's see. Also, Section 6, termination. If you would read along with me in the bylaws and the changes in the email, it would state, it is anticipated that the task force shall complete its mission within 24 months of the initial appointment of its members. However, this work is critically important and should be completed with due care. All of the needed time and attention. In light of that, the task force could bring forward short-term actions as appropriate. However, if at the end of 24 months, the task force has not fully completed its work, the task force may, by a 2/3 vote of the membership, add 6 months to its period of work. Okay? And also, the Community Resource Panel, there was a small change there. We would add a designee from the Durham Department of Social Services.
Well, thank you so much, Commissioner Hill. And any further comments or questions from commissioners? Commissioner Rakow.
Commissioner Hill, thank you for outlining those changes. I just wanted to suggest that might help with the readability of the termination paragraph if we put a period after appropriate and start a new sentence with however. Would that be okay? It's
Yes,
not
ma'am. That's
longer run-on sentence.
sorry. Yes, ma'am. That's fine.
Okay.
Commissioner Carter.
Yes, thanks a lot, James, for helping us getting this going forward again. I'm confused about the changes to who the county shall appoint.
Yes,
It's
ma'am.
quite a change, right? I'm just trying to be sure I'm understanding and looking at the right thing. Because I'm looking at the current bylaws, and it looks like the county is now appointing people very similar to who the city's appointing. Is that the suggestion? I guess the city has 1 community organizer, 1 justice involved, and 2 at large. And so our only difference is where the suggestion is also adding parent of a murdered child. Whereas before, the county's appointments were very different from the ones the city was appointing. Looked like the county, the suggestion was, was going to appoint someone from public health, the sheriff's community advisory board, criminal justice advisory committee, the juvenile crime prevention council, and 1 at large. I don't really have strong feelings one way or the other, but I just was wondering what the reasoning was behind the change.
Yes, ma'am. The change with CGRC justice involved, they do not indicate whether or not one of their people are justice involved. So Goodwin sent me an email on Friday and said it would probably be improper for us to have someone that was labeled justice involved from their board. So that's why I just dropped that language and it just said justice involved. Also, Commissioner Howerton and I spoke, and she thought it was important that that a parent of a murdered child, of a crime victim, was included, and I agree. And pretty much that's the crux of it.
So,
Heidi, were you finished?
trying to find my unmute button. And that, I'm totally fine with that. I agree that with Mr. Howerton, parent of a murdered child seems to make a lot of sense. I guess we're also then saying that we don't think it's important for us to appoint members from public health, those positions. And I actually, I sort of think that maybe your advice to make the changes is better. They're broader, I feel like except for the parent of the murdered child, the categories are somewhat more open, not having to narrow down to those particular boards.
Yes, and the public health director is a part of the resource panel, so there will be representation from the board of health.
Okay, good enough. Thank you.
I have a couple of questions, James, and thank you so much for working on this and coming up with something that it looks like we can all agree on. I do have a question about appointing. I'm trying to find the statement again about appointing the chair and of the committee. Is there some reason we can't allow the group to appoint their chair and vice chair rather than the elected officials doing it? Can they meet as a team and make those selections themselves? And I asked that. I asked
Sure.
that because given this is supposed to be a community-driven organization or task team, why not allow the members to make that selection? Is that possible?
I don't have any problem with that, and we did discuss that, Commissioner Howerton. I apologize. I must have admitted that, and yes, that seems to be a reasonable idea. Most, I believe most boards and committees, they do choose their own leadership.
Okay. And the other thing, as we're looking at the two at-large individuals, I would hope that one of those individuals would be someone from the Latinx community, and a community member. So making sure that all sides are represented.
I think when we receive our applications, we can definitely be mindful of that. We do need all committees in Durham included, and sure, yeah, that's something I think that is vitally important.
Okay. I just think that when we are hearing from community members that have been directly impacted by the everyday effects of the unjust system that's happening right now, it is important that all members, that we are hearing all voices in this community. So I think that, and hear them from an authentic way. We don't always hear from the people. We hear a lot from a lot of people, but we don't always hear from the folks that don't just lend their voice ordinarily. So I'm just recommending that we just make sure that we're hearing from all sides of our community. So thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Carter?
Sort of once again thinking about process, I know the city and the school board have already approved these bylaws, the current set, and so does this have to go back to them then, especially if there's any substantive changes that involve them? Seems like the changes to membership are related only to us, and so I would think that would not be a problem, that we're making changes there. And probably the termination paragraph seemed very minimal in its, the substantiveness of the change. And so the only one that might be of interest to them is the one about the appointment of the chair and the vice chair.
I think the
Sure.
wording is actually co-chairs. I don't think isn't it?
Yeah, I'm sorry,
co-chair?
co-chairs. Yeah.
Okay, co-chairs, yeah.
Well, whatever is the pleasure of the board, I'll be happy to do that.
So I'll just say, first of all, James, I really appreciate, again, all the work that you've done on this and everyone's contributions to this. I think that the categories for our appointments are really good. And thank you, Commissioner Howerton, for what you've added to this. I think that's really important. And I appreciate that Gudra made us aware of issues related to specific, work, specific committees that we already have. And I think that because of the resource advisory group, all of those groups, JCCPC will be on there, CJRC, I mean, everybody, public health, they'll all be available that way. So I think we're still making sure that they are, that their resources and what they have to offer is still there. But I think it does make this more available to people in the community. And related to Commissioner Howerton's point, I think I agree. We're going to need to be very aware, at least with our 5 appointments, and making sure that we get diversity in terms of, age, gender, race, all of those issues. I think with the 5 that we do have, to try to be really conscious about that, and especially people who are being disparately impacted in our community. So I'm fine with everything. I think the issue about that, the one issue about who appoints the co-chairs or whatever, I would just say we can put forth questioning that, but I don't want it to hold up the process of us moving forward. If they, the other groups are going to have to approve that as well. So I would suggest that we can put that forward as a suggestion for them to consider. But I would hope that we could approve this tonight so that we can begin advertising the positions. I know that the city is already moving forward with that. And I think there's an urgency to this task force, again, with the kind of gun violence that that is happening, that this is a community, this is an opportunity to have the community weigh in on, prevention and treatment, and diversion, and to have some community-based solutions. So I think there's an urgency, and I hope that we'll move this forward tonight, and that we can really ask
our staff to start advertising these positions as soon as possible.
So, Madam Chair, just to, and I concur that I think that there is an emergency in this community. And, you know, what I'm hearing from the community members that are directly impacted, the everyday effects of what I'm hearing is of an unjust system that have grown weary. People have grown weary of lots of talk and talk and talk, and they want action. So it shouldn't take a long time to select chairs, and I know from organizations that I participated in, it's really gives the people that are involved in the process leadership when they select who's going to be their chairs and their vice chairs. And I've heard over and over again too is they want us to keep our hands out of it. When I say us, I mean the elected officials. They want some autonomy to make some decisions without our politicalness, I'll say, as part of it. So when I don't think that anyone will have an object to that, as far as the community folks. So I'm just putting that out there because I've heard it a lot that they do not want us making those decisions for them.
So, Commissioner Hill, do you have a final suggestion for us or a motion?
No, ma'am, I'd like to move to approve.
Second.
Okay, so moved by Commissioner Hill, seconded by Commissioner Howerton.
Unreadiness or a lack of clarity. I'm not sure what we're approving.
Okay, so Commissioner Hill, do you want to go over what we're approving, just to make sure it's very clear?
Well, I think I know we're approving the changes to the membership, the changes to the termination paragraph. And are we also approving the changes to appointment of co-chairs?
Well, I think, as Commissioner Howard said, it's a good idea, but there are two other boards that would have to also agree to that. So we can suggest it, and I think it's a good suggestion. But we have to have also at least one of the board agree with us.
Exactly. Just my, just a little untidy about how to do it.
Well, so the city is approved there. So if the city wants, if the mayor wants to choose a chair, the county doesn't have to do it. The county can allow the citizens to elect the chair. I just think it's really funky for the elected officials to elect a chair for this committee.
Well, let's think about some of our task forces that are time limited. What are some? Well, we had the preschool task force, right? That was a very time limited task force. And I remember I felt like it was, those chairs were appointed, I think, by the superintendent and the manager and the city and county manager. The racial equity task force, there's a task force that just made a recommendation to city about racial equity issues. I'm not sure how their chairs were appointed, but I'm guessing probably by the mayor. We had the task force on the monument the toppling of the statue and how to
So
deal
my
with that, and that
my-
was pointed
my
by
sec-
two of you guys.
So my suggestion.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought,
would-
I didn't know you were not finished, thought I was talking.
Heidi, so my recommendation is to put it forth and get input from the group and decide to make a decision. If they don't want to do that, fine, but at least give them an opportunity.
Okay, so Commissioner Hill, I think he has made the suggestion that we will put that forth as our recommendation. Commissioner Reckow.
When Heidi summarized the changes, we left one out because there also was a change to the community resource panel to add one more slot. So we have change to the county appointment, change to the community resource panel, and then the termination change that James put forward with the slight amendment to divide it up into 2 sentences.
Great,
And
thank you.
now we have the co-chair issue, and what I was going to suggest on that is that I think we have a city county committee meeting coming up in October. And we could, if there's any concern about the change on co-chairs or any of these other changes, put it on for discussion at that meeting, since that's just a couple weeks away.
Great suggestion. We can still start advertising the positions and get the process going, which is the most time-consuming part of it, time-sensitive. So good suggestion. Thank you. Okay, so I think, James, you made Commissioner Hill, you made the motion. Commissioner Howard made the second, and we'll do a voice vote, starting with you, Commissioner Reckow.
Yes.
Commissioner Carter.
Yes.
Commissioner Howerton.
Yes.
Commissioner Hill.
Yes.
And I'm a yes. And I am so thrilled that we have gotten together as a board and we've come together and that we are unanimously moving this forward. So really grateful to everybody and really excited to be moving this forward for our community. Thank you, everybody. So the next item we have is board and commission appointments, and we're ready for you, Attorney Seiler. You're muted.
Good evening. I have the results of your votes. For the Adult Care Home Community Advisory Committee, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yep. All right. You could select one person, and for that, you've selected Dequetta Harris Leathers. For the Alliance Board of Directors, you could select one person, and you selected Carol Council. You pulled the tabulations for the Adult Oversight Committee, so I'm assuming that will come back later. For the Criminal Justice Advisory Committee, you could select 3 individuals, and you've selected Pierce Freeline, Mayor Designee Rodney Jenkins, Public Health Director, and Michael Oluda, Superior Court Judge. For the Discover Durham Tourism Development Authority, you could select 2 individuals, and you've selected Jennings Brody and Barry Van Diemen. For the Durham County Hospital Corporation Board of Trustees, you could select one person, and you've selected Federico I. Manon. For the Durham Open Space and Trails Commission, you can select one person, and you've selected Zia Ming Howie. For the Environmental Affairs Board, you could select one person. Bear with me one second. And you've selected Melanie Allen. For the Historic Preservation Commission, you can select one person. You've selected Laura Fieselman. And for the Memorial Stadium Authority, you can select one person. You've selected Tyrone Wilson. That concludes your voting.
Thank you, Attorney Seiler. And I would like to thank everybody for joining us this evening. Staff and viewers, thanks so much for being with us. And we have a closed session that we are being asked to adjourn to consult with an attorney employed or retained by the public body in order to preserve the attorney-client privilege between the attorney and the public body, which privilege is hereby acknowledged pursuant to General Statute 143-318.11A3, and to prevent the disclosure of information that is privileged or confidential pursuant to the law of this state or of the United States, or not considered a public record within the meaning of Chapter 132 of the General Statute GS 143-318.11A1. So good evening, everybody. Oh, we didn't vote yet, sorry. Need a motion in a second.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Reckow, seconded by Commissioner Howerton, and a voice vote starting with Commissioner Carter.
Yes.
Commissioner Hill.
Yes.
Commissioner Reckow.
Yes.
Commissioner Howerton.
Yes.
And I'm a yes, and so we're unanimously adjourned to closed session. And we will follow the link that has been provided to us. And good night, everyone. Have a good rest of your evening. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Go ahead, Heidi.
I move that we adjourn this meeting.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Carter, seconded by Commissioner Reckow. And voice vote with Commissioner Carter,
Aye.
Commissioner Reckow.
Aye.
Are there any other board members on this? Is that you, Commissioner Hill?
Yep.
Okay, Commissioner Hill. Yes, that was a yes. And I'm a yes. So we are unanimously adjourned. Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Night.
Aye.
Night.